Hey gang, I wanted to share something with everybody because I've been talking. Of course, you guys all know about my dogs, and a few weeks ago, I talked in a video about how one of my dogs, Timber, was sick, and she had a bleeding cyst that would bleed and periodically stop and then start up again and stop, and she was 14 years old and. It was a very expensive surgery to remove her spleen, and there was no guarantee she would, of course, survive the surgery or how much longer she was going to live. So we chose to let nature take its course, and about a little over 2 weeks ago, the beginning of June, she passed away. And I know a lot of you have asked about my dogs and asked about her, but I couldn't talk about her until now. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to talk about her much longer. She was with us for 11 and a half years. And shortly after we got her, we rescued her from some folks who had found her in a campground in Missouri. She wandered into a campground. They were camping in Missouri. And they brought her home with them because she's an adorable little thing. She's about 35 pounds at the time. And a hunting dog, a hound dog. And they brought her home and they couldn't handle her. And through word of mouth, I found out about someone that had a dog they wanted to get rid of. So I went over and looked at her, and I immediately fell in love with her. And I knew there was some issues with her. I knew she probably had some parasites, and I could see she had some ticks on her. So I took her home and I removed the ticks, and I took her to the veterinarian the next day. And the veterinarian found several different kinds of parasites in her and gave me some medicine, and I brought her home. And she was very aloof. When she rode home with me, she rode in the back seat of the car, and she wouldn't look at me the whole time we were riding home. When I took her, anytime I put her in the car, she would just turn away and look away, wouldn't look at me. It was very strange. And she loved to run. She loved to chase things. She loved to hunt, and she was a hunting dog. She was someone's hunting dog, and she had gotten loose, maybe gotten lost when they were chasing something in the woods, gotten separated or whatever, and that's how she was wandered into the campground. But I just figured, you know what? I'm going to give her the best life I can. She's pretty cool, and I'll work with her. But she was like 2.5 years old, according to the veterinarians. She was about 2.5 years old when we got her. And she was one of those dogs that really wasn't trained very well, and she would go off and find her own entertainment. And when you get a dog like that, it's really hard to train that out of them. And I'm not the dog whisperer, so I couldn't ever train that out of her. And we used to, she acted like a cat trapped in a dog's body. She would just do whatever she wanted. Every once in a while, if she wanted you to pet her, she'd come over and tell you that somehow. She would do things that she knew you didn't want her to do, just to get negative attention, because that was better than none at all. And she was getting attention. And we got her this guy for a playmate shortly after we brought her home. And of course we got him as a puppy, so he trained, get up, come here. He trained really well, okay? He lays down at 7 o'clock at night and he doesn't move until 5 a.m. the next day. But that wasn't her soul. That's not the soul that Timber had. Timber had a restless soul, and Timber always had to be on the hunt. And Timber would take advantage of me every chance she got, and she would run away if I gave her too much room to run. She would just disappear, and we would find her from her rabies tags on her, someone would call the vet, and I'd have to go to someone's house and get her. And of course, everybody thought I was a terrible owner, but you know, there was something about her free spirit that I admired so much that I kind of just let her do whatever she wanted to do. And she would get hurt and she would limp home and I would fix her up. And sometimes she would get really hurt and limp home and I would have to take her to the doctor for surgery. And so we started tethering her. I couldn't let that happen again. And so she would be tethered. If she had to go outside, I'd chain her up. She could walk on a 50-foot tether and do whatever she had to do and come back in. Of course, everything, you know, all the other, as long as I was with her, she would stay. And as she grew older, she lost that wanderlust a little bit, you know. So, you know, the last 8-9 months of her life, she spent in the yard. She wouldn't leave the yard. She stayed with us. She hung with me and Angus. And it was great. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. You know, I wish I could have got her to do this 10 years ago. Then we wouldn't have to have her on a leash all the time. We wouldn't have to have her tethered between 2 trees or whatever. We could let her go or locked in the house. But I'll tell you, if she could talk, she'd have some adventures to share. Every once in a while, she would get away from me. And she'd stay outside all night. And the next morning, she'd be sleeping in a lawn chair out in front of the house. We live out in the middle of nowhere. We're out in the country. And then I'd open up the door and she'd come in the house and she'd go downstairs and eat. And it might be raining. But after about 4 or 5 years of hunting her down in the rain and the snow and everything else, I gave up. And I said, well, if she's going to make it, she's going to make it. I gave her a good life up till now. And she would never go too far from home. She always knew where home was. That was the thing. She would give me fits and worry me sick. And she would always show back up at home. When she was younger, she would run so far and so fast that she couldn't find her way back home. But as she reached middle age, she would always come back. And sometimes she'd come back at midnight and stand outside the house and bark until I woke up and let her in. And that was her. And she had some good attributes. And you guys know her from the videos because when she knew I was doing a video, she always had to do something to get it in the camera. Where this guy, I have to sit next to him to get him in the camera. And right now he could care less. And her last afternoon, she was fine in the morning. And we were giving her, she wouldn't eat her food, so we were giving her whatever junk food she would eat, hot dogs and hard-boiled eggs and cheese and whatever else she would stomach, just to keep her going. And she started out the day really good and running around, and in the afternoon she suddenly became sluggish and she started to stumble and stagger. And so I got her situated in the grass, and she always had this favorite spot in the grass that she'd like to sit. So I sat there with her for about an hour. And I carried her into the house, and I set her down on her chair, and I went upstairs to make dinner for my wife and I. And Angus started barking about 15 minutes later, and he wouldn't stop barking. So I went downstairs, and she had died. And I had to get over the fact that I wasn't with her for 15 more minutes. But I dug her a nice deep grave, and I cut the cushion off of her favorite chair, and I put it in the bottom of the hole, and I wrapped her in a blanket. And I laid her in there. And then I went to the barn, and I got my tools, and I found a big flat rock, and I ground her a nice headstone. And I set it up that night. And we are getting by, right? You know, I'm a dog person. You know, something wrong with people like me, I guess. I never shed a tear when my mother died, because people die. If they live to be 70 or 80 years old, then good. But everybody dies. No one's getting out of this alive. She didn't approve of me anyway, so I don't know if that's why I didn't cry. But when my grandma died, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, or when I was in my 20s and my grandma died, I didn't cry, because I just knew that people died. She had a good life, and she wasn't suffering, and there wasn't any reason to cry. Last year, my father died, and I didn't cry. He didn't even know who I was when he died. There's something about me and dogs. Boy, what a personality she had. Even Angus is you can tell Angus is a little despondent and missing something. He's not as, he used to bark every night. 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, he would bark. And I would run down the basement, and I'd let him outside. We have a walkout basement. I'd let him outside, and they'd both pee, and then they'd come back. And since she's passed away, he does not go outside to pee until the next morning. He's been laying here on this couch for 3 hours now, and he will not go outside and pee. He was barking to tell me that she needed to go outside and pee because she wouldn't bark. This is a good guy right here. All that hard work you were doing for us, and I never appreciated it. He hasn't gone outside to go pee one evening since she passed away, but he still drinks water. So it was obviously her. Well, I don't think that I'm going to be getting too many more dogs, because I don't know if I can handle losing them. I don't know what I'm going to do when this guy's gone. But we're not going to worry about that now. We have to live until we die, right? Love and peace to all. Now you have my, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have tagged out. Now you have my dog's eulogy. Timber's eulogy. Maybe now I can think about her without crying. Love and peace to all.